Hello and welcome back to Into Vietnam. We will start up the program right away with highlights on the economic scenes in the past week between July the 7th and the 13th. The State Bank of Vietnam announces credit grows by 3.52% and forex reserve hit a record of $35 billion in the first 6 months. The World Bank says Vietnam solidifies macroeconomic stability. And the ADB warned Vietnam should not ignore low inflation. First of all, let's review the most notable figures of the week. In its conference reviewing the banking system in the first half of this year, held in Hanoi on July the 8th, the State Bank of Vietnam said in the 6-month period, credit rose 3.52%, while foreign exchange reserves hit a record of $35 billion. It also said dollarization continued to decline. At the end of June 2014, the rate of foreign currency deposit over total means of payment was only about 11.4%, down from 12.4% at the end of 2012-2013. Although pumping a large amount of money to buy foreign currency to increase the foreign exchange reserves, the State Bank promptly withdrew money to ensure appropriate monetary control in line with the inflation control target. As of June the 30th, total means of payments rose 7.29% compared to the end of last year, in line with the target of increasing 16 to 18% in 2014. By the end of June, credit grew 3.52% from the end of 2013, in which foreign currency surged by 12.03% and Vietnam dong credit rose by 2.17%. The State Bank Governor showed strong confidence in the credit growth target of more than 10% this year.
Cuối năm, cái tăng trưởng tín dụng thường nó gấp đôi so với 6 tháng đầu năm. Thế giả sử như năm nay chúng ta cũng cho rằng cái kịch bản đó nó được lặp lại. Thì với cái 6 tháng đầu năm chúng ta ở 3,5%, thì 6 tháng cuối năm của chúng ta nó sẽ ở mức khoảng 7%. Thì 7 mà cộng với 3 thì cả năm của chúng ta sẽ đạt được trên 10%. Thế thì như vậy, so với cái mục tiêu 12-14% của chúng ta là chúng ta cũng đạt được ở cái mức là trên 10%.
It's estimated by the end of June 2014, credit for export grew 10%, for supporting industry grew 5.8%, for enterprises applying high technology grew 13%, and for small and medium enterprises grew 2%. Since the beginning of the year, the non-performing loan ratio has gradually risen and accounted for 4.07% of total outstanding loans by the end of May 2014, according to a representative of Inspection and Supervision Agency of the State Bank of Vietnam. By the end of May 2014, non-performing loans on the balance sheet was 132.5 trillion dong, accounting for 4.07% of total outstanding loans. The NPL ratio has gradually increased since the beginning of this year, from 3.74% in January to 3.86% in February and 3.93% in March, 4.03% in April and 4.07% in May. The NPL ratio could have been doubled and accounted for more than 8% of total outstanding loans if there had been no debt restructuring. As many as 37,300 businesses were established in the first half of this year, with a total registered capital of 230.9 trillion dong, up 19.3% from the same period in 2013. According to the government news portal, some 33,400 businesses were dissolved or suspended operation in the first half, up 16.5%. The number of enterprises resuming operation reached more than 8,300. Regarding business structure, in the first half, those involved agriculture, forestry, and aquaculture saw a rise of 27.5%, real estate 37.7%, logistics 62.6%, and finance, banking, and insurance 14.9%. Most of the new businesses are located in Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, and Thái Bình. Coming up next is some major macroeconomic and investment news. According to a World Bank report released on July the 8th, Vietnam's macroeconomic stabilization performance has continued to improve, but growth remains moderate and continues to come in below its potential. The country's macroeconomic stability continues, enabled by easing inflation, strengthening external accounts, and stabilizing the foreign exchange market. Real GDP is projected to grow at a moderate rate of 5.4% in 2014, supported by continued foreign direct investment flows and strong manufacturing export. But domestic demand in Vietnam remains weak on account of subdued private sector confidence, over-leveraged SOEs, high non-performing loans of commercial banks, and narrowing fiscal space.
Investors can get investment certificates at home sometime this quarter, as Ho Chi Minh City authorities have committed to process investment applications online instead of forcing investors to file their proposals in person. The city's Department of Information and Communication said investors could get feedback from authorities much faster than before, thanks to the availability of an online application system. As such, they do not have to spend much time waiting at the Department of Planning and Investment. The city's Department of Planning and Investment and People's Committee Office are now working on a joint management program in which all investment documents and evaluations are stored in computers. The program will officially go into operation this July. The municipal government last March informed businesses of detailed procedure of handling investment proposals by email in a bid to increase transparency.
The capital attracted $560 million in foreign direct investment in the first half of the year, representing a 40% year-on-year increase. It was reported by the Municipal People's Committee on July 9th that FDI disbursement in the period also rose by 6.5% to $405 million over the same period last year. Total investment in the city between January and June was estimated at 871.1 trillion Vietnam dollars, or $41.4 billion, increasing 10.2% against the corresponding period last year. The city's budget spends 7.7 trillion Vietnam dollars, or $366.7 million, on development investment, meeting 44% of the whole year's target. It is added that Hanoi has been focusing on implementing ODA projects with disbursement of 1.43 trillion Vietnam dollars, or $68.1 million. The city has been rushed to complete 22 key projects by 2015.
On July the 11th, the ANZ collaborated with market research group of Roy Morgan to launch the first Vietnam Consumer Confidence Monthly Index. They said the country's consumer confidence has returned, hitting 131 points, up 7.7 notches in June, which is well over the average point of 130.5 points in 2014, and helps the country to rank the third position in Asia, just after Indonesia and China. The improved sentiment is mainly attributable to the better confidence and financial conditions of Vietnamese people. The ANZ says Vietnam has advantages of young population and the fourth populous nation in Asia, with a third of them aged under 20, which should be a firm foundation for the development of individual consumption segment. The bank also believes the growth of average personal income of 10% per year will have Vietnam's economy develop in a balanced manner and gradually reduce its reliance on exports and foreign funds in the next decade. According to the property advisor firm CBRE, apartment sales in Vietnam could jump by 40% this year from 2013, backed by an improved economic outlook, higher property investment and banks boosting house loans. Middle class and budget apartments accounted for most sales in the first half of 2014, while demand for high-class units also increased, thanks to economic outlook optimism and sellers' promotion packages.
The government has decided to set aside 4.5 trillion dong, around $210 million, to support fishermen to build bigger fishing boats that will be able to set sail on the high seas. The remaining 11.5 trillion dong in the approved 16 trillion dong package will be used for constructing 32 ships for Vietnam Coast Guard and Vietnam Fishery Resources Surveillance Force to help them strengthen their law enforcement capacity. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng said this budget will have considerably improved the law enforcement capacity of the two forces, which will in turn ensure safety for fishermen operating in Vietnam's waters. The scheme will also safeguard the country's sovereignty over waters and islands and improve search and rescue operations and other important missions.
The U.S. Department of Commerce announced its preliminary determination, adjusting tariffs on Vietnamese frozen Pangasius fillets imported into the country. It decided to impose import tariffs from $0 to $2.39 per kilo on Vietnamese Pangasius fillet in the 10th Administrative Review from August 2012 to July 2013. Under the DOC preliminary decision, Vĩnh Hoàn Joint Stock Companies was taken off the list of suppliers subject to investigation, enjoying a zero tax rate, while tariffs for Hung Vinh Group and 23 other companies were revised to drop from $1.2 to $0.58 per kilo. And Fish was subjected to the highest rate of $2.39 per kilo, as it did not supply specific timely information to the DOC. The VTO said the Vĩnh Hoàn case is a big success, as it is the leading Pangasius exporter to the U.S. However, it claimed the tariffs are unreasonable, as the DOC used Indonesia as a reference country to calculate the dumping margin. And now it's time for some foreign trade news.
The United Arab Emirates, or UAE, has surpassed Germany and Hong Kong to become Vietnam's fifth largest export market, trailing behind the US, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. Vietnam Customs statistics show that Vietnam's total export to the UAE in the first 5 months of the year jumped 27% year-on-year, tallying in as $2.03 billion. It is now forecasting the total export turnover to the UAE to hit a record of $2.4 billion in the first half of this year, a significant year-on-year increase of 25%. The country's key export items to the UAE include mobile handsets, computers, electronic products, paper, textile, and footwear. Vietnam spent nearly $500 million in the first half of 2014 to import 25,000 completely built units or CBU cars, an increase of 44.4% in volume and 53.9% in value year-on-year. The volume of imported cars was highest in May, a total of 5,000 units worth $106 million. The strong rebound shows that the import value of CBU cars had been on the rise since earlier this year. The GSO estimated that volume in June could be similar. Vehicle imports are increasing this year due to a tax cut that took effect on January the 1st as part of the Asian Trade in Goods Agreement, or ATIGA. The import tax on cars from ASEAN countries were cut in half. The tax will drop to zero when Vietnam joins the ASEAN Free Trade Area, or AFTA, in 2018.
The Vietnam Textile and Apparel Association reports The garment and textile sector's raw material imports jumped by 20.6% in the first 6 months of the year to $7.7 billion. Specifically, fabric imports were valued at $4.63 billion, up 17.5% over last year, followed by accessories, $1.5 billion, up 13.5%, and fiber, $749 million, up 3.5%. The country's total garment and textile export turnover reached $10.4 billion in the first half of 2014, 18.4% higher than the same period last year. VITV statistics also show that import turnover materials, including fabric and fiber for export items, hit $5.9 billion in the review period, an increase of 23.3% from a year ago. To achieve the export target of $13 to $13.5 billion in the remaining 6 months of 2014, the value of material imports is expected to increase sharply to keep pace with export production.
In the first 6 months of 2014, the United States and European Union markets posted the highest growth rate in export turnover, in which the United States market hit $13 billion and EU reached $13.1 billion, up 19.5% and 12.8% respectively. Major export items included garment and textiles, leather and footwear, electronics and components. More to follow.
Despite the difficulties in the global market, in the first half of 2014, the export values of Vietnam garment and textile industry hit $10.21 billion, up 16.4% compared to the same period of 2013. While the garment and textile import growth rate of major markets were not high, the US market was up by 3.2%, EU up 5%, Japan 4.5%, and Korea 15.7%. The exports of Vietnam garment and textile products to these markets were steady, especially the US market with a growth rate of 14.5% on year. The results were attributed to the stable macroeconomy, effectively contained inflation, and effective operation of businesses.
6 tháng đầu năm thì tổng cái kim ngạch may của ngành dệt may đạt khoảng 10,6 tỷ USD, đạt gọi tương đối là đạt cái chỉ tiêu mà do tập đoàn đặt ra khoảng 21 đến 22 tỷ trong năm nay. Đối với ngành may thì 6 tháng đầu năm thì thị trường chủ lực vẫn là Mỹ và EU. Chứ còn các cái thị trường bắt đầu sang tháng 7, tháng 8 thì bắt đầu sẽ dịch chuyển sang các cái thị trường Hàn Quốc, thị trường Nhật Bản.
With the expected whole year exports value of more than $23 billion in 2014, leaders of garment and textile believe that the sector will achieve its set target. Accordingly, the growth rate of garment and textile exports to major markets will be maintained. In addition to boosting exports to traditional markets, the garment and textile industry will pay more attention to the EU market because this market is continuously expanded, while Vietnamese products are accounting for only 1% in EU. Moreover, the upcoming Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement will pave the ways for the sector to increase its profits. Not only the garment and textile sector, other products also posted high growth rate in the two markets, such as leather and footwear, electronics and components, and seafood. As for the fine arts and handicraft sector, the US and EU are considered to be the two main export markets, although they are very demanding.
Thị trường của hàng thủ công mỹ Việt Nam thì trước là thị trường truyền thống thì chúng ta có thị trường Mỹ là thị trường lớn nhất, sau đó thị trường châu Âu là lớn thứ hai và thị trường Nhật Bản lớn thứ ba. Trong 6 tháng đầu năm 2014 thì ở Việt Nam chúng ta xuất khẩu được là trên 800 triệu, gần 900 triệu cái đô hàng thủ công mỹ nghệ. So với các năm trước đây thì là sự tăng trưởng của chúng ta dao động từ 8 đến 10%. Nếu mà so với giai đoạn mà từ 2005 đến 2010 đấy là chúng ta tăng trưởng liên tục từ cái số từ khoảng 12-15%.
The encouraging export results in the first 6 months of 2014 were achieved thanks to the big efforts the business community, associations, as well as the relevant agencies. However, in the context of changes in the economy and the dependence on the exports and imports from China, all the sectors should consider the economic autonomy, shifting the markets to avoid the dependence on the Chinese market.
Vì chúng ta biết rằng xuất khẩu sang thị trường Trung Quốc là một cái thị trường mà cái giá cả thì rất là rẻ mạt. Nhưng mà phải nói là trong cái điều kiện mà cái công nghiệp chế biến của chúng ta không phát triển, trong điều kiện mà chúng ta chưa đảm bảo được các cái vệ sinh an toàn thực phẩm cũng như các tiêu chuẩn kỹ thuật thật tốt cho mặt hàng nông sản, thì cái khả năng thâm nhập của chúng ta vào thị trường các nước phương Tây cũng rất là hạn chế. Và đặc biệt là trong điều kiện chưa có cái hiệp định thương mại tự do thì thuế cũng rất là cao. Cho nên cái việc giảm sự lệ thuộc vào cái thị trường Trung Quốc thì nó phải đồng thời với cái việc là chúng ta gia nhập vào các hiệp định thương mại tự do, mà sắp tới đây thì cái đó là một triển vọng cận kề rồi.
According to experts, there are many opportunities and challenges for Vietnam exports from now to the end of the year. Therefore, to achieve the export targets, businesses should be more active in changing the market. To this end, it's necessary to pay attention to the quality of products because this is the most important factor for their success.
Vietnam's economy has bottomed out and began its recovery process in the first half of this year. However, low inflation shows that domestic demand stays low, to which Vietnam should pay more attention. These are assessments by Mr. Tomoyuki Kimura, the country director of the Asian Development Bank (ADB) in Vietnam. In the talk with VITV reporter, let's watch for more.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for sharing with VITV today. Looking at a large scale, how do you assess Vietnam's economy in the first half of 2014?
Well, the GDP growth for the first 6 months is 5.2%, which is higher than the same period a year ago. And this is largely due to the pickup in the agriculture and manufacturing sector. So I think this is very positive sign, and also the in trade sector has shown a very strong result. So I think the economy has likely bottomed out.
Amid the tensions of the South China Sea, do you think it will have negative impacts on Vietnamese economy and the rate of 5.6% that ADB1 forecasted?
I understand that we have started to see some negative impacts on the tourism sector, but I think it's too early to assess the impact on the overall GDP growth. ADB will update this year's forecast in September, but I think that China will continue to be one of the very important trade partner. But the trade structure between China and Vietnam needs to be better balanced, particularly the Vietnam's dependence on import from China for the inputs to its exporting industry actually puts Vietnam in a vulnerable position. So I think Vietnam needs to continue its effort to diversify trade partners and also try to develop domestic supply chain.
Inflation stood at the rate of 1.38%. This is the lowest rate during the last 13 years. Do you think this is a bright spot of the economy at the current recent time?
Well, this inflation remains pretty much under control. Foreign exchange rate has been very stable, and foreign reserves has been replenished. So these are definitely a very positive sign. But on the other hand, we need to note that this low inflation is also the indication of a low domestic demand.
What challenges will Vietnam's economy have to face in the last half of 2014?
No, the challenge that Vietnam is facing has not changed. It's basically the three structural reform they have to implement, namely the banking sector reform, state-owned enterprises, and the public investment, so that the Vietnam really can maximize its economic growth to its potential level. Yeah.
Thank you again for giving us your time today. Hope to see you soon.
And as usual, the final part is a summary of local securities market between July the 7th and the 11th. And that's all for this weekend edition of Into Vietnam. Thank you so much for your attention. For comments and feedbacks, you can also reach us via email at intovietnam@vitv.vn or give us a call at 0422208288. Goodbye and enjoy your weekend.